Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Rolling Credits. I am joined here today by Pat and Kirby, and of course, it is me, Seth. Gums couldn't make it here; it was a little too early for him. Just kidding. It wasn't that. Well, it is early here, but um, oh, episode 5, guys. What a fucking episode! Before we get into it, uh, you know, I'm going to preface this because we are going to get into the nitty gritty here. There will be spoilers. So if you haven't seen this episode or if you've played the game and you know what's coming, you can, listen in. But if you haven't and you don't want anything spoiled, please stop here because we are really getting into it. Other than that, make sure you guys follow us on all of our pages. You should go to our Instagram. It's rolling_credits_podcast. And from there, there's a link tree at the top in our bio. And make sure you hit up our Discord, follow us on Spotify, leave some reviews, things like that. But especially for our Discord, we're going to have some trivia nights, movie streaming, things like that. So we really want to build a community there. So make sure you guys follow us there and join that Discord. And other than that, let's talk about this. You guys ready?
Let's do it.
Indeed.
Let's talk about it. So, like I said, what a fucking phenomenal episode. And, the first thing I really wanted to go over is, they had some things from the games, some new things. Did you guys have a favorite moment in this episode? Something that was just like, whoa. And so I'm going to start with you, Curves.
Yeah, I had a few, and it's kind of difficult to choose just one. But I think for me, it was the death of Kathleen and Perry. I was just waiting for it. As soon as the scene, like they get to that town, they take out the guy in the house, and the trucks start coming in. When that kind of like bulldozer truck exploded, and like the fire was everyone like, oh, this is the scene. There's fire. Here comes all the shit. Like the shit's about to go down. So seeing that like big ass bloater come up and start wrecking people, seeing Perry just get his head ripped off.
I wish that happened to Kathleen though.
I know. But I mean, having that like little kid or whatever it is, like just fucking take her ass down and start fucking going at it,
just ripping her face off.
Yeah. Yeah, that was great. I enjoyed that whole segment. Like I think they just did it very well.
Yeah, that was fucking awesome. Pat?
Yeah, I think, because I don't know, it's hard to pick it into like a moment, right? Because even just that entire kind of ending scene of them even just like walking down the street and like dealing with the sniper in like the perch, pretty much all the way through all the runners and clickers in the bloater running out of the hole. Like, as like, it's one of those scenes where it's like, as the gamer, the scene them walking down the street dealing with the sniper you can't see at the top of the clock tower, you're like, yeah, this is like every video game moment that you ever see, right? Where it's like you don't know where the shots are coming from. You got to like navigate in between the cars and get behind to like break the line of sight so that you go up and get the little sniper up in the perch, right? Like that's like every video game mission ever. So you're like, yeah, like you're getting satisfied from that. And then just the whole scene of them all rolling up and going through, and then the scene of all the infected running out of the hole. I mean, that's just like, yes. Okay, now we're back into like this is a zombie show. That's right. Like this is an apocalypse show. And you kind of started to get that feel again. And I think we had kind of lost maybe in the last 2 episodes. They kind of didn't have that as much for good reason. But I think they really wanted to set the tone back here and be like, remember, this is the subject of this show. And that's that was it. And they talked a little bit inside the episode, but like, we do want to bring the feel back of why humanity lost this fight. And I did really like that piece of it.
Yeah, I agree there. And I did want to pick that as my moment, but I'll get into my moment in a second. But I wanted to go back over the fact with the, when the infected all came out of that hole. I thought that whole sequence was just so cool. And watching the inside the episode, those were all real people. Like, It was no CGI.
Yeah.
Which is like, I guess they wanted to make it seem more realistic, which it looked real. And it was absolutely terrifying seeing how the movement from them and just like the horde of infected just pouring out of the hole was just like so cool to see. And I don't know, it seems scarier to me than the game, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
Absolutely.
yeah. Well, look at the segment of Ellie like diving through the window into that car and that little
Yeah.
infected following her in there, like doing like these like contorted like gymnastic moves over the fucking over the car seats and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That was scary. Like
It
that.
was terrifying.
Well, and they said that
That'd be
they
horrible to see.
well, they
Mhm.
said that they had hired producers and stunt people and like stunt directors and stuff that had spent a lot of time on Planet of the Apes and were trying
Yeah.
to perfect like that style of movement, that it is like basically like a horde movement, right? Where it's like a
Yeah.
full packed type, and like he specialized in being able to take large groups of people and get them to act and react in a certain way that was supposed to be, you know, geared in this scenario towards like, you know, an infected person, like, or a clicker or whatever it might be. So they did put a lot of effort into minimizing the CGI and making it look real, and like directing people who are essentially extras into moving specifically the way they want. I feel like that's really impressive to do on a TV set.
Yeah. And I think there's something to be said too about like the infected is like normally, you know, zombie movies or shows, you get that one type of infected, you know, that one type of zombie. Here we're getting all of them working together simultaneously and just overtaking a mass group of people, and it was just like it was so cool and just so freaky to see. And
Mhm.
these might be the scariest zombies. I would not want to deal with them ever.
Yeah.
But my moment was actually Sam and Ellie playing in the like underground bunker. I thought
That was a
seeing-
close second for me. I
Yeah.
liked that
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
just seeing like the humanity bringing back, you know, coming back to them, and the happiness that it brought them playing soccer and things like that. I thought that was just a really good, like, wholesome moment. And it was the first time we saw Sam obviously laugh, and the first time seeing Ellie really enjoy life. So I really enjoyed that part. So now getting into the spoilers and the most heartbreaking part of this episode. We all played the game, so we knew what was happening. Do you guys think though that the death of Sam and Henry was more impactful in the show or more impactful in the game? And I guess I'm up here first. So I think it was more impactful in the show. You know, the game was very straightforward. You know, you go through the missions, but with the show, we got that whole backstory of them hiding, you know, them trying to survive and all of that. And I thought, you know, just seeing that play out and having to kill a kid and like the blood spraying everywhere and seeing that impact Henry so much, that shit just broke me. And seeing like Ellie too, like Ellie trying to like understand the situation, and you know, we're gonna talk about this here in a second after we're all done with this one, but seeing her trying to comfort him and putting the blood on his leg trying to save him, I just thought that whole sequence was just so much more devastating. And yeah, that shit made me cry, I'm not gonna lie. Pat, what do you think?
I definitely think it did, because like it's really hard with characters like this in general, because like it's the same thing we were saying with Bill even in the previous episode, where characters like this in the video game, you know, they are essentially still, they're a stopping point that like you're using for development, that as you kind of are playing through the missions and playing through the games, it wants you to grab a character. But in the video game, it's like, yeah, this was heavy and this sucks, but you do kind of take it as a point and you kind of move on. In the show now, you're able to provide all this backstory and all this flesh out, this development. Why are they, you know, the most wanted people in Kansas City at the time? Okay, why is Henry making the choices that he does? You know, you see this great character interaction with Ellie and Sam. You get so much deeper into the weeds that you when you do know it's coming and it's going to happen, it's like, shit, dude. Like it does become a lot heavier. It's kind of hard to say that it doesn't. It's like, not that the video game didn't have like a heavy scene for it, but it's just, there's just more impact here. Even if I think it's still valid to say that even in the show, this is still just a stopping point, right? Like there's still just like a piece of the thing, but because of all the things that you kind of see in the backstory, it becomes a much greater plot development point for Joel and Ellie, for the foreshadowing, for the guys, for the gamers out there that know what's coming. This is obviously a much bigger end game plot point that will kind of be just in all these things are the Bill interactions, this interactions, like they do a good job of the show of being able to like justify the decisions that they make. And I think that that's a big piece of it is because you can show more background. So I definitely think it had a bigger impact on everybody, whether it be Joel, Ellie, myself, the viewer. I think it definitely has that impact.
Mm-hmm. I'm actually, for some reason, the opposite of you guys. Um, I don't know. I don't know why. And I think it might be because we have such big expectations for these scenes now with, you know, the death of Joel's daughter, with the episode with Bill and Frank and everybody. Like, I didn't get hit as hard as I did the first time playing the game. And I thought I was going to, and I think that might be on me. Like, I was expecting a little bit more, like of an emotional tie. But when it happened, I didn't really have quite the same reaction that I did when I played the game. And I honestly think it is because I was just I was expecting it because I knew what was going to happen, but I was also expecting, you know, them to try and put more of an emotional tie to it. And for me, it just didn't hit home. It could also be, I watched the episode with Lauren, with my wife, and we're sitting on the couch and I know what's coming. She doesn't. And she kept saying, oh, like, what if the older brother gets bit? Like, what's going to happen?
Oh, no.
And I'm sitting there, I'm just like, just wait. So I was kind of more like in her reaction than I was in my own. So that may have had something to do with it. But for some reason, when I watched that scene, it just didn't hit me quite as hard as the game. So
kind of follow up question to that then, like, do you okay, I'll give you a little two-parter. Do you think that your reaction to that is more because of you played the game and like you kind of knew what was going on? Is it solely because of that? And was Lauren's reaction a little more in tune with what you kind of would have expected from it?
Yes, yeah, I think because I knew what was coming, and because I know that they are really playing up the emotional ties to some of these characters that we know from the game. Like, I think that I was just kind of a little bit desensitized to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of lived that moment through Lauren. And her reaction is more of what I would expect from, like, if I hadn't played the game and I didn't know what was coming,
Mm-hmm.
or like the average viewer or something like that. I feel like her reaction was a little bit more appropriate.
Because I do think in your defense, it's like it is such a bang bang moment at the very end that you kind of do have to rely on a lot of the backstory in the actual episode itself to feel the effect of it. Because I do kind of feel what you're saying in the sense of like it's not as like in the moment you're not as heavily tied to it. It's more of a like this should happen and then bang, it's over, like kind of thing. But it's you're kind of predicating that a lot of the backstory ties you to it more. And if you played the game, I feel like you're not, you know that this is what the end is for these characters, and you kind of have a loose grasp of what's going on. So you're not as just like hooked in and tied because you understand the end result. I do understand your point there.
So, and I also think that for me, like, I feel like that scene in the game, like when you have to kill Sam,
Mm-hmm.
And Henry's reaction to it, I feel like Henry's reaction in the game, it felt a little bit more dragged out. Like, it felt like a little bit longer. Like, it was really quick in the show. But I feel like there wasn't, and I haven't done like a scene by scene, back and forth or anything like that. But I feel like in the game, there was a little bit more because, he was blaming Joel. He was trying to blame like everybody else. And then eventually just like, fuck it and like off himself. We really didn't see that as much in the show. So I feel like that scene was, it was kind of, it was condensed a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I still think it was a very impactful scene, but yeah, I don't think it just hit as hard for me.
It is interesting to see kind of like, people who have played the game and people who haven't played the game, and how good of a job it is doing at, gaining this whole different audience, and just capturing their attention. But it is like, I'm in a Slack group, and we were talking about the episode last night, and some of the people in it haven't played the game, and they were talking about how crazy that was, and it's like, kind of to your point, it's like we kind of expected it, but it is still so brutal to see something like
Yeah.
that happen.
Mhm.
But it is crazy how good of a job they're doing at really just getting everybody involved here, because adding the backstory, I think, is for the people who haven't played the game, but I think it just, they're making it way more emotional than the game. Like, not that, but like having all these backstories for these characters, it's just making the whole experience more of an emotional journey versus like a quick shooter and a quick mission.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, moving on here, continuing on the thread of Sam. When Ellie, there was that moment where they were talking on the chalkboard, and he was scared of what happens when you get bitten, and to comfort him, Ellie smeared her blood on Sam's leg. Do you guys think that she thought it might actually work, or do you think it was more of like, I'm going to try to comfort you because this is a horrible situation, there's nothing we can do? So I'm going to start with you, Curbs.
I think it was equal parts, honestly. Like up until this point, we've seen like Ellie is told like your blood is the future, like your immunity is going to save humanity. So I believe that when she finds out that Sam's been bit, that the first thing going through her mind is like, oh hey, like this is what I'm here for. This is my purpose. I mean, we got to remember she's still a kid. She doesn't know how this stuff works. So I mean, it's fully understandable that she might just cut her hand and try to put her blood in there, and maybe that's the key to saving him. But at the same time, if you look at everything that happens prior to that, when they're sitting there passing the little chalkboard back and forth, and he's asking her like, are you scared, this and that, she's really kind of taking the role of a protector and older sibling. So I believe that on one side, maybe she believes that just smearing her blood there will work. On the other, it's a calming tactic. It's something to keep him a little bit more calm. So I think it's kind of a 50-50. I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there too, and I don't believe that was in the game, that blood smearing part when I played it.
I don't think so. No.
Yeah, it wasn't. So
No.
I do find that interesting because obviously, and spoilers again here, at the end of the game, you find out that like it's something to do with Toasty! And it is interesting because these infected are different from the infected in the game in some ways. So I honestly thought it might have worked, and I was kind of waiting for it to kind of like maybe change from the game. And when it didn't, I was really like, well, this is gonna be interesting to see how they tie this all together. But I think, yeah, she was definitely trying to comfort him. I think she did think it would work because she is still a kid after all. And I am, like I said, I am interested to see how they're gonna tie it all together and how she actually can save humanity with her blood.
Yeah.
Pat,
yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, I it's kind of hard because Ellie, I think in the past like 2 episodes now that it's specifically, her and Joel and they're on this kind of mission together, she has kind of started to develop a little bit more of this hero complex, a little bit of it, of like understanding that she is the quote unquote savior, I feel like. And especially kind of meeting Henry and Sam, who were, really scared. And she's like, kind of this like confident, able trying to like, so she is trying to comfort Sam and doing all these kinds of things. But I don't know. I do think there's just like, but there's definitely this part of her in her head that was like, this is going to work. And it was just like that easy. Like, I think she definitely kind of was kind of trying to fulfill that idea of like, this whole trip is worth it. Like before actually getting there, and like kind of trying to understand like that this next trip where they're going to, what was it, Wisconsin, right? Where they're on their way to. So I think that was a way for her to maybe attempt to justify all the trouble that they're going through, all the people they've lost, all the things that they're kind of like prepping for a little bit. And I think when it didn't work, I think that hit kind of a little too close to home. in some ways that were more than just losing a friend. So I think that that's going to kind of have some impact here in the next like 2 episodes of the way that Ellie is viewing maybe her trip, maybe her purpose, and kind of figuring out what's going to be coming next.
She's definitely having to grow up fast at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah. And you're kind of developing into this role where people expect a whole lot of you, and it's definitely an interesting way to kind of go about something.
Yeah. And kind of culminating all of this, one thing that after watching that Inside the Episode, which if you guys haven't watched the Inside the Episodes, I highly recommend it. They have some pretty interesting details, and they kind of talk about the decisions that they make versus the game versus the show. But after watching this Inside the Episode, one thing that the creator stated was that the more ruin and hurt that you cause to protect a person you love, the more brutal it's going to be when you lose that one thing anyway. So you see this in Henry's reaction to losing Sam, which I thought was just like, after hearing that quote, it just kind of clicked for me. Joel realizes at the end of this episode that, what happened to Sam and Henry is kind of happening to him and Ellie. And you kind of see the fear in Joel's eyes for the first time and how terrified he actually is at the end of the episode and kind of the ramifications of this whole situation. And how do you guys think this whole breakdown of this episode basically affects not only the decisions Joel makes, but how does it affect Ellie moving forward? And I want to start with your thoughts here, Pat.
Yeah, I mean, this Inside the Episode was really good. Kind of them talking just obviously about like the way they make decisions and like the way that they focus on how Kathleen eventually interacts with Henry at the very end of that scene there, saying, things as brutal as, do you think Sam was supposed to die, right? And kind of like having Ellie right in earshot of that. And, Joel's hearing it from the perch and kind of starting to understand a little bit of like, well, I think it also makes a bigger commentary too on like how this world that they live in has so many gray areas of what's acceptable, right? It's like not everything's as black and white. It's like just protecting your friend or like having this job. It's like well, morality kind of can get kind of gray here in some weird areas, and you do some fucked up things to like complete your objective. I think it definitely kind of will affect Joel in some of the later episodes and whatnot, because it's just going to affect the way that he views the overall purpose of what he's doing here. And I think with Ellie, it's definitely something that, she's going to see this. And I think it kind of changed the way she sees like maybe some first round interactions with some people, because like, I think everything from these two's interaction with like Sam and Henry is going to make them question the way that they approach people, like just off the street, or what people that they find in random interactions throughout the world. But I definitely think like you could see as Joel was kind of burying Sam in Henry's body, you could definitely see the effect they were referring to in that Inside the Episode of I can't trust the way that I view partnerships quite the same as I thought I could. And that's definitely something I think that takes a big toll on the show.
Before you go into your little thing here, Curves, I did want to go back to your point here about Kathleen, because I think that's an interesting point, is like, her saying, maybe you were supposed to die. Like, them being a villain isn't very, like, cut and dry anymore. And
No.
because at the end of the day, Joel and Ellie are doing the same thing. They're killing people to survive,
Mm-hmm.
And this is the kind of world that they live in. I thought that was kind of like an interesting take, and obviously she was a villain, but like she did such a good job of portraying it. But she also lost somebody, just like Joel did, and they're just trying to find their way in the world. And I thought that comparison was really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they play around the whole gray area thing quite well,
Mm-hmm.
because if you look at any of the quote unquote villains from the show, from the game, if you look at it from their perspective, they're doing the exact same thing.
Yep.
So I think that, in this last episode, with what happened with Henry and Sam, I do believe that it's going to draw like Ellie and Joel probably like a little bit closer together, because they know that they can rely on each other. And I think they're just going to be more wary of anybody else that they come across. I mean, in Joel's case, we've seen him go through the death of his daughter. We didn't see the process afterwards, but it was hard. And I feel like he might view that as like, I I can't go through that again. And he might just become even more brutal towards, outsiders, for lack of a better term. So I don't know. I think it's going to make them a little more protective of each other. And I think it's going to make them much more wary of anybody else that they meet.
Yeah. Hey, listen, this episode really hit at the point. The old saying, snitches get stitches, bro. But I agree with all of your guys' points. I think this whole situation really opened up their eyes to, the brevity of what kind of world they're really living in. And I think they're both going to really try to take care of each other. And I think, kind of to your point, Kirby, I think we are going to see a more intense side of Joel, and a more take on a more like, if you're in my way, I'm going to fucking kill you. Like, he's going to do everything he can to protect Ellie because he already lost somebody he loved and he doesn't want to go through that again. So I think it affects him that way. And in Ellie's instance, I think it kind of made her, and like we've seen it the last few episodes, it's kind of making her grow up a lot faster. And I think her seeing this and, her getting to the Fireflies to really find this cure is going to be more of a drive for her to really like hone in, listen to Joel, and really drive home the point that like she needs to help people, which I think is going to make, that one, the ending of this, because we know what happens, the ending of this probably hit a little bit harder because, she basically wants to save everybody at this point.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. This show is going down as one of my favorite shows. They are just doing a fucking fantastic job.
They're doing great. Yeah.
Is there anything else you guys wanted to add or talk about?
I think we kind of wrapped it up all up there, nice and pretty, with a bow on it.
Yeah. Well, since Gums isn't here to take us away, I guess I'll do it. I don't have any funny adages. Vicks Vapor Rub hasn't sponsored us yet.
Come on, Vicks.
But Neil Druckmann, if you're listening to our podcast, maybe you can send us those sweet, Last of Us jackets that I'm seeing some of the creators getting. But yeah, on that note, guys, make sure you guys follow us, like I said, on our Instagram, Rolling Credits _podcast, or Rolling _credits _podcast, and follow us on all our other channels like Discord, things like that. But we'll see you guys next week.